Good evening and good morning to the people listening to it at that time. Everybody listening, welcome to another edition of the Cajun Knight Live. I am your host, the Cajun Knight, Jacob Mook. We have a lot to talk about this evening, but we are going to start off with something a little closer to home. Then we're going to start bouncing around all over the globe. But to start off the conversation, our resident Jewish correspondent, the yoked Yid himself, aka the vampire, is currently in Colorado. And for those that don't know, Colorado has been experiencing a crazy wildfire that it started off at a campground and it just kind of got out of control and it spread and it spread and it spread. Last night when we had talked, I think you said it had doubled in size, Royce, and now it's grown so much that
Yes.
you and your people had to evacuate. So fill us in on what the situation on the ground is.
So as of right now, the most recent notification that we got was that there had been 47,952 acres destroyed by this fire. There are well over 165, probably 200 people fighting fires at this point. Hopefully, maybe if there's a good chance that if the wind dies down, which has been a problem, which is why the fire spread how it has, which has eliminated air support. So it's a bad situation. So Colorado City, Rye, Beulah, and San Isabel, a lot of these places have already been evacuated before this point. And then earlier today, after my eye surgery, on my way back down to town, they said, all right, well, anybody else who is in Colorado City, you guys need to up and leave.
Wow.
So that's what we were doing, and you could definitely see a lot of the smoke. Those who are watching, shameless plug.
No, shameless plug. Check us out on YouTube if you want to watch it, and on the Patreon. But yeah, no doubt, on screen right now is what looks like clouds over the horizon. No, that would be the smoke.
Yeah, all this wonderful smoke, and like the sun has been all smoky, mood has been smoky. So it's been pretty hectic. Out of the 30 years my family has been in this area, this is the first time that this has come this far south and where it's gotten this dangerous.
Colorado doesn't typically have wildfires like this, correct?
No. So no, that's not true. So Colorado is notorious for wildfires because very often Colorado is extremely dry.
Sure.
And it gets very, very windy. So people can let campfires get out of control very, very quickly, or who knows what.
Yeah.
Because so one of my friends who I'm staying with, he said that he saw smoke to where it was like about 10 acres, and then from that point, like once the wind got a hold of it, it takes over, and that's been one of the main problems as far as battling this whole thing is the wind and it jumping from one place to another, from trees to grassland to even over some highways and in certain places.
Yeah. God, dude. And so as of this moment, the wind has shifted, because I remember last night we were talking about it on the Cult of Conspiracy live show every Tuesday night at 9. You had said that the fire had kind of turned and was going away from y'all. So in the time of last night and this morning, the wind started blowing it more south towards you. And you're saying that it's never gone this far south.
Not here. There have been plenty of forest fires other places, but as far as here, no. But the wind definitely changes because, as I said, so earlier, whenever they told us to evacuate, it was heading down south. Now it's going north from south, so it's actually keeping the flames away from my house at the moment.
Yeah. How long have you lived in Colorado?
Off and on for like 20 plus years.
Okay, and would you say that this is like a yearly thing, that there's some sort of a wildfire that has to get put out? Or
yes.
Is this
so
okay.
every summer there is some sort of fire. There's a app that I was told about that I'm now using called Watch Duty, and that will show you all of the fires in Colorado, and just there's almost always some sort of fire around. Just not all of them get 40, 50, 60, 70,000 acres that are burned in this. And right now, this is the one that's over here. There's a Sydney fire that last time I checked was 85,000 acres. So, there's a lot of wildlife and a lot of acreage just being fucked right now.
How hot is it where you currently are?
Right now it's actually not so bad as far as the temperature. It's probably around in the 80s at the moment,
Okay.
but probably that is some of that is due to cloud cover, but anywhere between 80 to 100 degrees. Like last week, it was in the high 90s. Like this week is supposed to be in the high 90s. So
Wow.
it gets pretty toasty. Thank God for a lack of humidity, but unfortunately, like with the lack of humidity and no rain, like yesterday, there was some thunder and there was some rain, but obviously it didn't do a whole hell of a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know what y'all's typical rainfall looks like, but it doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot of good as of this moment.
No.
Wow. Well, I know that you just had an eye surgery today and you've had to evacuate from your home. So, brother, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you coming on this evening and talking to us about this. I understand that you're going to have to dip because you got a lot going on right now. But, Royce, our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family and your community. And hopefully this fire gets handled and dealt with before more people get hurt.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll keep you appraised. But I think that as of yesterday, there were definitely over 4,000 homes that had gotten um, evacuated. So this is definitely affecting a lot of people. So as I will keep you appraised and I will let you guys know what's going on. But thoughts and prayers and much appreciated.
Absolutely, man. Wow. Well, all right. What a way to start the conversation and the episode this evening, y'all. And so, as we were talking about thoughts and prayers and positive vibes, whatever your personal flavor is of what you send somebody from afar when they're in need, I feel like it's actually a really good/weird, but yes to both, segue to talking about what just went down when it regards the Catholic Church. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen at this time, and let's talk about our main topics of this evening. For anybody who would like to see what we are talking about, you can either check us out on YouTube at the Cajun Knight, or you can come and join in on the conversation every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central at patreon.com/Cajun Knight. Link is in the description below. So for those that weren't with the Cult Live last night, and for any of the listeners of the Cajun Knight that may not have been a part of that last night, whatever. So we now have a situation within Catholicism. The SSPX consecrates 4 bishops without Pope Leo's approval. Now, we had talked about how if that was to go down, these 4 bishops would be excommunicated. Now, apparently it went down, and now Pope Leo, who some have said is a little more open-minded, he's seen as a little more liberal. He might be reasoned with on a one-on-one scale, which these things, like him, love him, hate him, whatever, don't think about it. It doesn't matter. Whatever you feel about the guy, some of that might be true. However, the problem is that he is also beholden to centuries and centuries old law, over a millennia old rules and laws that he has to abide by and enforce, so to speak. So with that, let's listen in on what is going on within the SSPX consecration debacle. Let's learn together.
Today, in defiance of Rome, the Society of St. Pius X, commonly known as SSPX, consecrated 4 new bishops. The consecrations happened in Switzerland and come without a papal mandate from Pope Leo. Under canon law, such an act carries automatic excommunication. We're happy to welcome to the studio Dr. Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. Great to have you here in studio.
Good to be with you.
What is the result of the Episcopal consecrations today, and what does church law say about this?
If we had one word to describe what happened today, I think the word for me is heartbreaking. We had in Switzerland the consecration of 4 bishops by the Society of St. Pius X. This was in open defiance of Pope Leo XIV's repeated pleas for them not to do it. They chose a date that is almost exactly 38 years ago, that the last time that the SSPX consecrated 4 bishops illicitly took place. And this symbolism in this consecration, in this liturgy, was also very deliberate. It was very provocative. And so the church has an understanding of what schism is. And while the head of the SSPX, Father David Pagliarani, keeps assuring us that this is not a schism, Canon 751 in the Code of Canon Law describes a schism, or a schism, as the refusal of submission to the Supreme Pontiff, or the faithful in communion around the world. Clearly, objectively, this was a decision made in defiance of the Pope, and the liturgies themselves took place without the papal mandate. So if we're trying to sum up in another way what we're seeing today, it's not about the traditional Latin Mass, as Cardinal Gerhard Müller, the former prefect for the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, put it. This is about authority. And from that standpoint, those who do these actions incur automatic excommunication from the Church.
In your opinion, how has Pope Leo XIV handled this situation?
With remarkable grace and patience. That places him in firm continuity with the popes of the last decades who have grappled with the decisions on the part of the Society of St. Pius X. We saw that in 1988 with the consecration of 4 bishops then illicitly by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. That was resolved ultimately with the lifting of those excommunications by Pope Benedict XVI. So we have seen popes reaching out consistently. Pope Leo XIV has again made appeals. He has asked for dialogue. So he has gone out of his way to try to prevent this from happening, including making an appeal just yesterday to them, asking them, please do not do this. Do not render the tunic of Christ. And yet they proceeded with these consecrations despite his deep, deep requests.
They did proceed. What happens next?
Well, that's one of the questions. We can anticipate that there will be some sort of a formal Vatican response. The Holy Father may decide, for example, to issue a decree of formal schism. How broad that will be, we'll have to determine. I think the Holy Father is likely also to continue to have a reach out to the Society of St. Pius X. Cardinal Müller, again, who has been very vocal in all of this, especially the consistory that just took place in Rome, has proposed that we reestablish a commission, similar, it had the name Ecclesia Dei, that would be able to welcome those members of the SSPX who feel that the Society of St. Pius X has gone too far, that they have crossed a line with these consecrations. For the average Catholic, Cardinal Müller also reminded all of us we should not attend liturgies of the SSPX. We should definitely keep all of them in our prayers and hope that this can be resolved in a way that restores unity to the Church at a time when we desperately need that unity.
I mean, all right, let's talk about this. So I'm not going to say that the Church doesn't desperately need unity. I think that's a pretty understandable and reasonable thing to say. However, again, I got to say, over Catholicism, at least I can't speak to the entire world here, but at least in the United States, I would say Catholicism has a pretty solid united front overall, more now than they have, I would think, in the last 20 years. Honestly, the church attendance is up. People being active within the local parish is up. And I don't mean up by like half a percentage, and I'm also not saying like a 300% increase, but no, there has been a noticeable uptick in attendees, specifically, at least in my area in Louisiana, specifically here. But I would argue that that's also going on across the country. And in some regards, some experts would say around the world, this is going on. Now, the SSPX, and Tony, you can speak more onto this. You were telling us about it last night. They were founded and they're seen as kind of like they are traditionalists within Catholicism, right? They kind of get down with the older ways. They don't acknowledge Vatican II. You said they do or don't acknowledge Vatican I?
They do acknowledge Vatican I. There was another group called Old Catholics that didn't acknowledge Vatican I, and they're very small. They're still around. There's only about 10,000 of them, and I don't know, maybe like 20 priests or something, but the SSPX has 700 priests, and the Roman Catholic Church as a whole has about 400,000 priests worldwide. As for whether attendance is going up or down, I think it's been pretty flat most of our lifetimes, but it's fallen a lot since the 1950s. It was something like 70% weekly attendance in the 50s, and it's more like uh, 20 or 30% now. I can't find solid statistics on it.
Mm.
But anyway, there's a big crisis in the church. I would say all churches, most churches in the 1960s with falling attendance. And I don't know if anyone else has made this comparison, but I think of the Catholic Reform movement of the 1960s as being like a big COVID mask. It's like the
Mm.
COVID mask mandate. There's a crisis. We need to do something. Let's do this. Is it working? Well, yeah, by deductive reasoning, it must be helping a little bit. No, I don't think it really helped at all.
Right.
So SSPX point of view is that it was wrong to translate the mass, and we just got to go back to the older way of doing things. And they have survived and they have grown. I did not look up their number of priests over time, but I think it's risen. And the people who go there, the people who go to traditional Catholic Mass tend to have bigger families.
Yeah.
So in some ways, those churches tend to be more successful than Novus Ordo, in my opinion. Another problem I've seen going to Novus Ordo parishes my whole life, and I'm obviously an American, I'm a white American, but they're always getting priests to come over here from the Philippines and Africa.
Yeah.
There's very little there's not enough people from our community joining seminaries. And over in Ireland, for example, they got one seminary that's putting out on average one priest or fewer per year. And
Really?
yeah, in Europe, they're importing their priests from abroad as well because nobody in Europe seems to have vocations anymore. So yeah, I'd say there is a very big vocation crisis and overall crisis. But SSPX, they're bigger in Europe than they are here in the United States.
I could believe
So
that. Yeah.
whatever's going to dictate the future, I think the best thing the SSPX could hope for is that they continue growing, and the numbers and the budgets and everything are just going to play out the way they play out. And we'll see whether Novus Ordo or traditionalist, including SSPX, we'll see which one of these groups is the most successful. It's kind of like a marketplace of ideas in a way.
Yeah, I
So
can
let's
see
just see
that.
what happens.
Now, as far as the whole the bringing in of foreign born and raised priests to America, yeah, that is absolutely a fact, right? And of the Catholic churches that I attended for the majority of my upbringing, there was the one church that, pretty much born and was started going there. The dude was, I think he was like in his 80s before it was all said and done. And it was understood that he was going to retire and or die at his post at that church, which he did. But he was there for, usually they try to cycle people out every few years or so. He was pretty much there untouched for like 20 years. And because he was doing well with it, they left him alone, that kind of thing. But I will definitely say that I have seen a fair amount of foreign priests making their way to America for their vocation. I don't know if we have American priests going abroad for the same thing, if we have like an exchange program or something. Like, I've never honestly looked into that. I figured if I was born in Nigeria and I became a Catholic priest and there was a opportunity for me to go be a priest at some random church in Iowa as opposed to Nigeria, I am jumping on the next plane. You know what I mean? I always just kind of thought that was their way of cutting out their slice of the American dream, if you will. But I don't know if that's there's a good transference from American priests going abroad. That is crazy to hear that the Irish seminary, which the Irish are militantly Catholic or militantly Protestant, but they're putting out one priest a year. That's pretty wild too.
Yeah, they used to be militant a long time ago, and some of them still have kind of nationalist feelings attached to their, feeling of being Catholic. But
Yeah.
nobody's willing to really put their money where their mouth is, and the church is the Catholic Church is dying in Ireland, from my understanding, from everything I've heard. I've never been there.
Right.
I haven't been abroad much, but there's just not enough vocations among the white people of the world, the heritage white areas of the world, to support, missionary activity going over there. The missionaries it's really reverse direction now.
Yeah. I mean, but like I was saying earlier, like it's not just Catholics, but Christianity as a whole is on the uptick. The last report that I saw, and granted, I think this was across all denominations. I want to say that churches are seeing like a 20% increase in regular attendees. And most of those are young men, believe it or not. But it seems like you're saying, like when the 60s happened and a lot of people left, not just Catholicism, but a lot of people left faith in and of itself, because culturally it was the whole, the hippie era, free love, and, shaking off the shackles of traditionalism for, this new and wild radical thing. And then now modernity has failed us to such a point that the younger generation is looking like, yeah, well, the boomers fucked over everybody, so maybe we just do the opposite of what they did, and we just like go to church, we get jobs, we get married and have families. These things are starting to, oddly enough, creep back into societal norms, at least within America. I can't speak to the rest of the world, but even with that being said, I'm wondering, and just like they were saying that the last 4 bishops to be consecrated, they were excommunicated, and then a couple years later, Pope Benedict repealed that, and they were welcomed back in, all the things.
Yeah, that was 2009.
Yeah, I'm wondering if these bishops who are about to be excommunicated, I wonder, because it's not saying that the Pope is definitely excommunicating them. It says that they are facing it, although I am of the belief that Leo is going to do what he has to do here. But is it also possible that they could be, that could be repealed and they could be back in the good graces of the Holy See in a few years?
Yeah, they're gambling that they'll be let back in someday. And as the analogy I drew yesterday is, you can think of the Catholic Church like an umbrella or a tent, kind of the same way people liken political parties to a tent. And do we want to have a big tent or a small tent?
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum of opinion from very liberal to very conservative. And the tent goes over most of that spectrum, but not quite all of it. And these guys, SSPX, they're dancing right at the limits of what the tent's covering, and they're trying to pull the tent in their direction. And a lot of them are trying to stay just outside of it. And there have been schisms from the SSPX into the tent and further away from the tent. The FSSP is an acronym I don't remember the meaning of, but they left SSPX in 1983 to come back into the Catholic Church. And they run Catholic traditional Latin masses, and we got one in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that I've never been to called Mater Dei, and I want to go there someday, but I hear that it's so packed you can't even get in the building.
Dude, I just found one Catholic church in Baton Rouge that still does a Latin Mass. One of these days I want to make it to it.
And then there's a Society St. Paul V. St. Pius V. From 15 or 1600 something. He said that the Mass should only be in Latin, and they're sedevacantists. You know what that means? It means that they don't believe that there's a legitimate Pope. So they are complete schismatic. They are self-declared schismatic. They don't even pretend to still be in the tent.
Wow. But they still consider themselves Catholic.
They consider themselves Catholic as, the church existed before the Second Vatican Council. They think the Second Vatican Council destroyed it, and we haven't had a legitimate pope since then. But they consider themselves legitimately Catholic. They just don't think the rest of the Catholic Church is Catholic.
Wow. I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but also, man, you want to talk about a hot take. Like, the vast majority of the Roman Catholic world is doing, as the Holy Father tells them. Meanwhile, this group, and I don't even know how big that group is, but I'm assuming that's also got very dwindling numbers these days as well.
But, I haven't looked it up. I would guess they're actually pretty steady.
Yeah. Wow.
That's my guess.
Are they in the United States predominantly or more in Europe?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm
I
sure
can
they
look them
got
up and
people
get
all
back
over.
to you.
Yeah,
I'm sure you got other stories to get to, but thank you for spending some time on this.
Oh, absolutely, bro. I find this fascinating. So let's read about this. This is from the National Catholic Reporter. Oh, very much.
It's definitely like right up the alley of cult of conspiracy, because it is. People accuse them of being a cult all the time. But
Sure.
what is the difference between a cult and a religion? It's just size and mainstream acceptability.
I think whenever you get told that you have to sell all your earthly possessions, sign everything over to the leader, usually when the whole orgies and drugs thing come into the mix, it's like, I see what you're about. But yeah, there's only a few little things that really separate a cult from a religion. They are there though. If you go into a church and the church is telling you that you have to sign over your house and your car to the church, and they let you use it, of course, but like it's the property of the church, then like, yeah, that's a cult.
Yeah, well, SSPV and SSPX don't do that.
Yeah, for sure. But all right, let's talk about it here. So, defying Pope and facing excommunication, SSPX consecrates bishops at huge outdoor mass. So, moments after swearing obedience to the Catholic Church, the Pope and his legitimate successors, 4 priests, were made bishops without papal approval in what Pope Leo the 14th had warned would be a schismatic act. So, this group has their own pope. Like they have a patriarch that they consider to be the Pope. That's crazy.
Wait, no. So SSPX considers Pope Leo to be the Pope.
Okay.
I think SSPV has a different one. There's also one called the Thuk line. If that sounds weird, that's because he's Vietnamese. Is a Vietnamese guy. There's like 20 of these Sedevacanist popes, but SSPX does not have a different pope. They recognize Pope Leo XIV is the Pope. Leo just doesn't recognize them.
Okay, I got you now. Okay. For months, tensions have been building between Rome and the Society of St. Pius X, an ultra-conservative Catholic group known as the SSPX that rejects several church teachings and reforms it says has been tainted by modernity. Those tensions came to a head July 1st in the rural Swiss Alps when SSPX consecrated 4 new bishops for the society on the grounds of its international seminary in Essonne? No, that's not the thing under the Econ.
I would say Econe, Econe with 2 diacritical marks.
The O with the little house on top makes it a hard O noise. The E with the apostrophe facing that way in French makes it make the E noise. If it was facing the other way, it'd be the E noise. So with my very limited knowledge of French, and this might not even be French, it seems like it'd be a econe, but I could be wrong. Don't know. But either way, that city, despite repeated Vatican warnings that doing so without the Pope's approval would result in excommunication for those involved. Among the 4 priests was Father Michael Goldade of St. Mary's, Kansas. Wow, home to a large SSPX community. I did not know that. Goldade is now director of the Society's seminary in Dillwyn, Virginia, where nearly 100 seminarians are in formation according to the Society. The SSPX claims to have more than 750 priests worldwide and 1,500 members, including brothers, oblates, and religious sisters, and it's active in 77 countries. I had no idea. Breaking months of public silence in the looming rupture. Pope Leo XIV said that in days before the consecrations that the church must, quote, move on, end quote, if the SSPX followed through on its threat. He also sent a letter to the Society Superior, published by the Vatican the day before the consecrations, urging the group to turn back from committing what he called a sin of extreme gravity. Listen, I know I'm a Protestant and all, and I get it. That is a wild concept to me. Like, I can't imagine, even if it was like a head pastor of one of these big mega churches or something crazy where there's like a real network. It's not just like a dude at a church in the middle of a field somewhere. Like big network, big business and all of that stuff. Franchise outposts and other campuses, whatever the fuck you want to call it. For him to say, hey, pastor so-and-so at this church, you're about to bring somebody in as an associate pastor to you. I didn't give you the thumbs up on that. So you're committing a sin. Like, to say that you're doing something that pisses him off, I got it. To do something that is possibly threatening your own job and whatever, okay, I get that too. To say that it is a sin of extreme gravity, that is a wild concept for my Protestant brain to really wrap around. But wow. But Father David Pagliarani.
Father Davide Pagliarani.
Pagliarani. Oh, so they don't pronounce the G. Excuse me. Father David Pagliarani, Superior General of the SSPX, said in his homily at the consecration mass that the Pope's appeal presented a false dilemma, quote unquote, between the society's vision of the faith and its adherence to the church. Direct quote here from the father here. No one can choose between faith and the church, he said. We want the faith of the church in order to remain in the church, and we want the church within the faith, even if those opposed to us refuse to understand this. I mean, it sounds like a simple plight, but again, they didn't get the approvals. Organizers said some 16,600 adults attended the outdoor mass outside the Society's International Seminary, nestled in the Swiss Alps. Many attendees brought young children who were not included in that count. A contained excitement bubbled among the crowd as attendees filtered onto the seminary grounds, chatting about their links to the society from desperate parts of the world before picking up bracelets with the QR codes for cashless payments once inside, much akin to a music festival. Well, fair enough. Families entering the ground spoke to one another in English, German, French, Czech, and Spanish. Even the day before the consecrations, the Swiss towns surrounding Econ were populated with attendees, priests stepping off tour buses in full cassocks. I'm assuming that's like their big cloak. Large families with children in veils, and pilgrim groups with open breviaries on regional trains. Wow. Okay. After a half-hour procession, the four priests sat before the altar and swore an oath to forever be faithful and obedient to the Pope, all right, and to combat and pursue to the best of my power heretics, schismatics, and those who rebel against our Holy Father, the Pope, and his successors. So yeah, Tony, just like you're saying, they don't see themselves as out of line with Rome whatsoever. They truly feel that this is them doing as what Rome would want them to do, even though the Pope has said not to do this. It's very strange.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're trying to pull the tent in their direction, make the Catholic Church more conservative.
Which is not inherently a bad thing. I mean, I don't know, within like the Mass itself, they want to be Latin, cool, go for it. But as far as the order of operation, if you will, of the Mass, the taking of the sacraments, confession, is there something crazy that they do that sets them apart of, like, if I was to be regular Roman Catholic and I went to an occasional Latin Mass and I happen to accidentally find myself in an SSPX Mass, is there something that would stand out to be like, wait a minute, that's wild? Or you know what I mean?
I don't think so. I've never been to one. And the Catholic Church has conferred on them the authority to do things like hear confessions and even perform marriages and baptisms. Yeah. That's been kind of like, escalation ladders in politics or war. It's kind of the thing where it's a small measure that they can grant or rescind as leverage in other negotiations. So the SSPX has been granted the ability to do that in the past, and I think they still have the ability to do that. They're in this really gray area. They're right at the edge of the tent, basically.
Yeah.
They're kind of getting kicked out of the tent now. We're just going to see what happens, and if a future pope comes along in 20 years that says, no, okay, welcome back into the tent, and then they're going to say, not so fast, we want to yank the tent further in our direction. So that's just the dance that's going to be going on for a long time if they have the numbers to continue to have any leverage to stay relevant.
And that's the other thing, too. And I don't know much about the SSPX, but for them to consecrate 4 new bishops, you don't do that just because a dude has like long and faithful service. You do that more for administrative reasons, right? Like their number is growing so much that you need to elevate a few other people to preside over the new parishes or the multitudes that you have. Now, unless they had, 4 bishops pass away within the last decade and these people are basically filling those empty seats, then like, all right, cool.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay, I got you. That makes
Rome
sense.
is trying to use the fact that okay, they're just going to die off, and then they're not going to be able to make more because a priest needs to be consecrated by a bishop, and Rome's just hoping, oh well, yeah, they'll just die off, and then there won't be any more of them, and then problem solved. And they're going no uno reverse or something.
Yeah.
Let's see how that goes. Oh, and
Okay.
there's this other issue. This is called simony. Well,
Oh,
this is a type of simony. This
okay.
is when this goes back 1,000 years when the kings were appointing bishops in northwestern Europe, and for a while, the Carolingians were getting along great with the Pope, and they could appoint their bishops, and the Pope didn't care. And then eventually, the Pope said, "No, you can't appoint these guys." And then the Pope started to exercise a lot more authority over who got to appoint bishops and said, no, the king can't do that anymore. And that created a lot of friction in, like, I don't know, the 900s or the 1000s. I'm very fuzzy on that history. But more recently, there was a Catholic clergy in China, pre-communist and post-communist China in the mid 20th century, and they
Yeah.
got persecuted a ton.
Oh
But then
yeah.
the Chinese government decided that no, we don't like those bishops and priests. We prefer these other guys. We're going to recognize these other guys as bishops and priests. And the Catholic Church didn't recognize that second set.
Yeah.
So, there's set A and set B. And then Pope Francis actually recognized the Chinese set B, so to speak. So
Really?
a lot of people were very critical of that. And I
I
thought,
mean,
well, he was in a hard place. I don't understand. I mean, I kind of can understand why he would do that. Better to get somebody there that the state recognizes as being legitimate and will allow to do their job.
yeah.
But the more traditionalist Catholics thought, no, that was very wrong of Pope Francis to do that. That's simony.
Yeah.
So how is it that the Chinese Communist Party can appoint bishops, but these Latin mass loving people from Marcel Lefebvre from the mid 20th century aren't allowed to? That would be an argument the SSPX would make,
No,
and
I
we'll just see how
absolutely
it plays out.
I absolutely can see where they're coming from on that. And the fact that Francis acknowledged that is, like you said, very controversial, but he was a very controversial pope too for his political ideations and everything else. But I had no idea about that group in China and that the Pope at the time actually acknowledged them. But that actually, this conversation leads to this next paragraph, which leads to another question I have. So the presiding bishops, Alfonso de Galarreta and Bernard Fele, I'm not sure, both of whom were excommunicated in 1988 after being illicitly made bishops, a decision later lifted by Pope Benedict, did not have a papal mandate, which is customarily read aloud during a bishop's consecration. Okay, so this was lifted by Pope Benedict, but did they get to keep their bishopness? Because if they
Yeah,
were the
they did.
presiding bishops, they had to have.
Yeah, I think those two guys were like the main guys. And well, there were like four of them back then, and I think two of them died. And then those two guys, Fillet and the other one, they're trying to appoint like four more now. And I think we read their names up at the top, but my memory sucks and I can't remember them. But yeah, I think Fillet was one of the ones back in 2009.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it said. Benedict repealed that, and they're back in the good graces of the Holy Father here. But
Yeah, or at
even
least they
still,
were. They're probably not right now anymore, but
right?
they were for a little while.
But that's interesting if because I'm not sure if the Catholic Church recognizes them as bishops, but apparently they had to be the presiding bishops over this ceremony. So SSPX at least acknowledges that. But that is fascinating. Does that? Because at that point, that could mean that they could also authorize their own archbishops and, in a certain conversation, potentially a cardinal, which I don't know to what level and extent the Rome would be cool with this and like finally be like, all right, fucking stop the show, stop everything. This is done now. I don't know to what level that would go, but still, that's wild. Okay, so at the point of the liturgy when the mandate would normally have been read, an assisting priest instead pronounced a statement justifying the consecrations. Wow. So quote here, from the Second Vatican Council to the present day, the authorities of the church have been animated by a spirit that is contrary to the faith and have been acting against holy tradition. Therefore, before God, we consider it a sacred duty toward the Holy Church, toward souls, to proceed with the consecration of bishops who are entirely faithful in her holy tradition and to her constant magisterium. Yeah, that's a statement, all right. Though the 4-hour mass began in sunlight with the crowd forming a sea of white caps printed with Econ 2026 that were distributed at the entrance, clouds slowly gathered and darkened overhead as the ceremony reached its focal point. Screens showing the mass flashed a warning, beware of imminent thunderstorms. Okay. Bro, how that would have been great. That would have been hilarious if, like, as soon as the ceremony was over, the lightning struck the tent or something like that. Would be fucking hilarious. But all right, all good.
That would be a heck of a sign,
Bro, right? Oh my God. Anyway, as the host was consecrated, a torrential downpour fell on the crowd and muddied the hillside where thunder rolled and lightning flashed across the sky. The rain kept drizzling and subsided after some 20 minutes. Yeah, just enough to make everything all muddy and wet and shitty. After receiving their miters, the new bishops walked through the crowd to give their blessing, holding out their gloved hand for the kneeling faithful to kiss their rings. By the mass is closed, the sun had returned. The newly consecrated bishops processed uphill to the seminary courtyard, where they were met with applause by SSPX priests. Despite the celebratory scene, a melancholy tinged the crowd, which was well aware of the consequences of what they had just witnessed. Quote, there is definitely some sadness that Rome is not happy about the situation, because it's so clear to us that this is not only a good thing, but a holy act, a necessary act. This is from Joseph Torzala, a Latin teacher at La Salette Academy, an all-boys SSPX boarding school in Illinois. It's crazy to me that I've never heard of SSPX, knowing that they have such a foothold in the United States. I had no idea. But rather than a schismatic act, as the Pope described it, Torzala told National Catholic Reporter that he sees the consecrations as, quote, a statement to the world that all we want is to be Catholic. It's come to the point where that means we need more bishops, so we get more bishops, he said. I'm sure some will be souls that are scandalized, but for those that truly understand the situation, I don't think it will change their faith one bit. I agree. I don't think that this situation is going to change anyone's faith by any means. I definitely think that the Pope is not going to be happy about this. I definitely can see some excommunications in the very near future. Also very possible that whoever takes over next will repeal those. I don't know, because I don't see him finding a common ground on this one, not when such a bold statement was made.
Yeah. What I've found kind of politically within the Catholic Church is people argue about politics a lot, and
Sure.
like everywhere. But the more conservative you get within the Catholic Church, ironically, the more opposition you find to SSPX, not less, because a lot of your more conservative Catholics need to strongly countersignal SSPX to prove that, well, I'm not one of them. I'm not schismatic or borderline schismatic. And, Nick Fuentes, what would you think his opinion of SSPX would be? You would think, oh, well, he must be very traditionalist or conservative. And no, he's actually very anti-SSPX.
Really?
And the group I'm in, mostly, because this is what my wife was interested in. It's called the Anglican Ordinariate. They were Anglican years ago, and then they were brought into the Catholic Church. And they're also extremely anti-SSPX because of their situation. Even though they tend to be very conservative, they feel like they have to countersignal SSPX really strongly, just to make sure everybody knows that the Anglican Ordinariate is faithful and loyal. We're not like those disloyal people over there.
They have to overdo their Catholicness to prove. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
This is something I've noticed very strongly.
Does Nick Fuentes claim that he's a Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he's a Novus Ordo Catholic. You didn't know that? Yeah. Catholicism is part of his identity.
Oh, wow. That's, phew. I know
Most
that
Catholics, if they know anything about him, they don't really want people to know this and they don't want to talk about it.
I knew that he at least had some sort of Christian leanings. I had no idea what denomination. To be honest with you, I don't watch. I don't consume a lot of Nick Fuentes' content. Every now and then he'll make some crazy statement that will be mentioned on other shows and other channels that I do watch. The last thing I just saw from Nick Fuentes, actually, weirdly enough, just a couple of days ago, he is flaming Candace Owens alive. And I know that she's very Catholic. She's been open about that for years now. So the fact that he's going against the narrative that he helped perpetuate for so long about Israel, about the Jews, about Charlie Kirk, and all these things, he's basically now swapped his opinion on this and is flaming out against a few different content creators, but Candace Owens specifically, which I thought was wild. Now knowing that he's a Catholic, that's some blue on blue. You know what I mean? That's some shots fired. So, well, it's Catholic. Let's call it purple on purple. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But yeah, I had no idea that he claimed he was a Catholic. That's all right. That's a take. But hey, who am I to judge? I'm a Christian, but I am a very bad representation of it. So, I mean, who am I to throw stones? You know what I mean? But wow. And honestly, I didn't know of all the people, I would feel like Nick Fuentes, especially how he does very controversial things and says a lot of very controversial takes as far as what like society would deem to be normal or whatever. The fact that he is not with a group that is so controversial, but is also so traditionalist, I felt like that would be right up his alley.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect. But he is firmly behind the Pope, including Pope Francis, who
Oh,
was more
wow.
liberal than the current one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite surprising. Oh, and the whole Chinese thing, that controversy is from 2018. The Chinese Catholic bishops have to join the state-run Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, which is the CPCA.
That is a
And
wild statement. Could you imagine if we had an American Patriotic Catholic Association that was like state mandated?
yeah, that would suck.
Wow.
The closest thing we have to that, I guess, is the Knights of Columbus. They make patriotism a big aspect of their identity.
Well, sure. A special interest group. Absolutely. Hell, the organization that I belong to, the SMOTJ. Patriotism is a very big thing here, but same with the Knights of Columbus, right? That's an international organization.
Well, it was just American for a while.
Okay.
And it's branched out a little bit, but it's still mostly U.S. You can tell it's mostly from the U.S., but it's become big in Mexico and the Philippines, especially. And
Okay.
there's a few, very few, but a few in Poland and Ukraine, of all places.
I didn't know that because I mean, my organization was, well, I mean, if we're gonna go for like the traditional foundation of it versus when it had its rebirth, it was under Napoleon. So France was kind of where it respawned after the situation in the Middle Ages, but for it to branch out like it was. But I mean, to be fair, every nation, they operate very different. We're an autonomous group. So like, for instance, my priory operates completely different from the Texas priories. And we all operate completely independently, but we're all under the umbrella of the national organization. But even with that, patriotism to the home nation has always been a very inherent part of our group, and I could at least agree with that. And that's the thing, like the Knights of Columbus, it's a special interest group. And like, although the parish that you go to might be like the sponsor of your chapter of Knights of Columbus or whatever, like, cool, absolutely. But that's not like state mandated or even church mandated. You know what I mean? For China to take that route, which I mean, it's China. What do you expect? But still, for religion of all things, I had no idea that was even a thing. I was today years old when I learned this, y'all. That's wild. Oh man. Okay. So we have talked a bit about religion. Now let's talk a little bit about, as we're talking about China, let's talk about the plane that just crashed into Beijing's tallest building and sent debris all over the place. Now, this happened a few days ago. We're just talking about it now. We only get together once a week to have these talks. But I do, I'm not saying that the 9/11 situation is anything in comparison to this. This was a small plane. I understand that. But like buildings that tall are meant to withstand shit like this from happening. Specifically, the World Towers were built, or the World Trade Center towers were built to withstand plane crashing into them by the engineers that built it and the architects. That's their words, not Jacob's. But now let's look at this one. Beijing's tallest building just got hit with a plane. Let's learn about this together, y'all.
The alarming image is a small plane crashing into the tallest building in Beijing, one of the tallest buildings in the world, in fact, and authorities tonight have not said whether it was deliberate or accidental. Here's Britt Clennett with the pictures.
Tonight, a small aircraft crashing into one of the world's tallest skyscrapers in Beijing. Shocking video circulating online showing chunks of debris falling to the ground below. The tail section of the two-seater Sunward Aurora dropping hundreds of feet. Flight Radar 24 sharing a partial flight path showing the plane had taken off from an airport 30 miles east of Beijing around 6 p.m. local time. Images showing what appears to be a large hole and broken glass of the iconic 108-story CITIC Tower. Roads closed, fire engines and police vehicles seen outside. Video circulating online showing flames at the base of the building, firefighters working to put it out. Beijing airspace is closed to drones and civilian planes, leading to questions about the cause of the incident.
And David, Chinese authorities, they have yet to say anything about this crash, and all videos, images and posts related to the incident have been removed from the internet in China. David?
Scrubbed from the...
Shocker that it has been scrubbed that quick. I mean, say what you want. China can get ahead of a narrative real quick. They're not just bringing up COVID or nothing. This is all a part of it. Everything's state run there. But, and again, I don't know the style of plane. We're going to read an article about it. We might learn more together on that one. But just looking at this picture, this is the damage. This is the hole. And I think the debris that fell might have been just chunks of the plane, to be honest with you. But you see my point. I hope y'all are kind of picking up on what I'm putting down here as far as how a Boeing 747 that is a large plane. Not denying or taking away from that. But it should have done this to the World Trade Centers, not the planned demolition thereof. That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to make this a whole soapbox about 9/11, but I mean, how often does a plane hit a tall building to this scale that we could really talk about? You know what I mean? So I don't know. Let's talk about it together here. This article is from CNN. Small aircraft crashes into Beijing's tallest skyscraper. So the small aircraft appeared to have struck the tallest building in China's capital on Friday afternoon in a shocking incident in one of the world's most fortified cities. Dramatic footage from Beijing's posted on social media showed debris falling from the 109-story CITIC Tower, that would be CITIC, also known as China Zun, Z-U-N. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. Is that one of those things, Tony, where it's actually like a zh noise? You muted yourself.
No shit. No, it's more of a TS sound, like Sun.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So the China Soon, as well as a tail section of the plane and a broken window of a taxi cab on the ground. Yeah, so that was a chunk of the plane that fell. I was correct. CNN journalists witnessed people evacuating from the skyscraper gathering on the street near the entrance, along with fire trucks, police cars, and an ambulance. CNN has not yet received an official response from the authorities, nor will they. The person who answered the phone at the relevant district branch of the Beijing Public Security Bureau told CNN that they were not familiar with the situation. They then referred CNN to another number, but the call went unanswered. Again, shocking. And they were unfamiliar with the situation. You mean the one thing that just went down in Beijing? Like this crazy event that, like, when's the last time this has ever happened? Oh, I don't know anything about that. Interesting. CNN has also reached out to the Beijing municipality government as well as a number listed for the aircraft's owner for information on the incident. I promise nothing's going to come of those either. Online images showing the plane's registration code seem to point to a domestically manufactured light sport aircraft, a Sunward SA-60L Aurora. Okay, so it's a small, I'm not sure if that's like a prop plane. Is that like what we would consider like a bush plane? It's a light sport aircraft, so I'm assuming so. But anyway, it was owned by a local general aviation company, which offers services like pilot training, personal recreation flights, and aerial photography. Okay, fair enough. Unverified flight data from the from Flight Trader or Flight Radar, Jesus, 24, posted online appeared to show a severely deviated flight path for the aircraft after it took off from Beijing's Shifosi Airport. Now, and we looked at that flight path earlier. It took off from the flight line, and it basically just made a beeline straight for Beijing. Now, I don't know. I am not going to speculate and say that this was something terroristic in nature. I can't say that. And I don't inherently believe that necessarily. This could realistically just be one of those things, crazy accident, who's to say? I will say that if you look at how that plane hit the building, it was a direct hit to the dead center of the building. It wasn't like homeboy was losing control and it was like it clipped one of the sides. No, it seems to me as of this moment that it was very intentionally flown into that very specific building. Who knows? Since May 1st, the Chinese capital has been effectively drone-free under sweeping new rules. Residents are not allowed to buy, rent, or fly drones without government approval within the city's sprawling jurisdiction. Yeah, you'll have that. So even just the unusual presence of an aircraft in the area made this incident alarming for one resident, Anna, who spoke to CNN near the scene. Direct quote from Anna, which talk about a Chinese sounding name, you know what I mean? I heard a lot of policy and rules and laws about don't use any aircraft in Beijing, she said. So I'm actually scared about it because this is the central business district. How could they allow a flight in the air for 20 minutes to get into this district? I mean, most countries are not watching their skies with anti-aircraft weapons for an internal threat. I'm just throwing that out. We all can see it's a very, very small plane, and it's also also after work time. So probably, I don't think there will be a huge aftermath, but it's still scary. Okay, so it was after a time when most of the people were already out of the building. So hopefully there's not, crazy death toll or anything like this. It doesn't look like a whole lot of damage was done to the building itself. Let me see. Is this a video we could watch? Yeah, it's a 1-minute video. Let's see if this does anything for us.
So we've just moved about 2 blocks away from the tallest building in Beijing. And if you look above the yellow lettering, you can see a gash in the side of the building. That is where we believe, and video seems to show, a small aircraft has hit the side of this building. Again, this is the tallest building in Beijing, the Zhongguozun, the CITIC Tower, one of the tallest buildings by roof height in the world. Police have asked us to move a little farther back from the scene, but there is calm here. So right now, we're trying to assess how exactly this happened, how exactly an aircraft diverted from its flight path. But right now, the main streets in the central business district area surrounding the Zhongguozun are off limits. Police are asking people who have taken out their cell phones not to take pictures, but there are plenty of images on social media of people who are hurt down below, and we're trying to assess how exactly this could happen.
Okay, fair enough. So it's been days, and this is the most up-to-date information that I could find on this. So China did a really good job of silencing people and taking down cell phone and social media images and shit. But okay. And I have a hard time believing we'll ever actually get the whole story on what happened here. But wow. Interestingly enough.
I bet if one of us spoke Chinese or read Chinese, we could find conspiracy theories about it in their language.
Oh, for sure, dude. And I'm also curious. I'm going to have to do some more digging on this one later on. Try to use some sort of like a translator or something, because, I mean, it's all Chinese ran state media. And so they're not going to release a story that is not approved by the CCP. And I'm not saying that in some sort of like a malicious way. I'm saying that that's just what it is. That being the case, if this was a domestic terrorist plot or something like that, there will never be a scrap of media that acknowledges that. They're going to make it up to say that it was a training accident. The pilot had a heart attack while flying, and in just the worst, coincidence ever, it smacked this building and all, like, you know what I mean? they're going to try to downplay this and make it seem like it's no big deal as much as humanly possible, which I understand.
This reminds me of the Lin Biao incident.
Remind me.
Never heard of it. But this is their equivalent of the JFK assassination. He was a high up guy under Mao's government in 1971, and he got on a plane with his family that tried to fly to the Soviet Union, and it crashed over Mongolia because they didn't have enough fuel.
I remember hearing about, I didn't know the name, but I remember hearing about a Chinese, I think I even heard it was a Chinese diplomat or something that tried flying to the USSR and got shot down in Mongolia. I remember hearing about that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I heard it was because they were trying to pump fuel onto the plane as fast as they could. And planes take a lot of fuel. A big plane would take 200,000 pounds of fuel, like a 767, which crashed into the World Trade Center.
Right.
And they just couldn't get enough fuel on board in time to give it the range it needed.
Yeah.
But anyway, I actually want to ask you about your opinion about what happened on 9/11 very briefly.
Oh, man.
I can tell you what I think happened first, but I think the planes were real. I'm not into the satellite beams from space or even thermite, but I think that the fire suppression sprinklers were sabotaged, and there might have been truck bombs in the basement, and it did get hit with real planes, which carry 200,000 pounds of fuel each, which is 100 times the weight of this light Cessna type plane that hit the Chinese building.
So, okay, briefly, but also we could kind of stick on this for a minute. I'm good with it. I believe that 9/11 was absolutely, and I'm not just using the term an inside job as like some sort of turn of phrase, because I don't know, there was so many people that benefited from it. It's kind of like the JFK assassination. It's obvious that something went down. There was some fuck shit afoot that they didn't want us knowing about. Okay, cool. Was it the driver? Was it the CIA? Was it the FBI? Was it the mafia? Was it Israel? Like there's so many fingers were in that particular pie that all of them have there's like 13 groups / people that had a very big vested interest in JFK getting assassinated. 9/11 is extremely similar. So you could say that it was done by the CIA, by Mossad, by, specifically because Al-Qaeda was a CIA brainchild. Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset for years. His name was Tim Osman in their records. You can look it up. I do believe that planes did in fact strike the buildings. Now, I've heard a lot of people mention, oh, well, you see that thing under the plane. It's a bomb. Bro, I don't believe that either. I think that shitty cameras from 2001 don't do a lot of justice, especially with the first plane hitting it. There's like a quick glimpse of the first plane hitting the tower. Second plane, all eyes are already on Tower 1. So they saw the second plane coming in and they got real good images and videos of that one hitting. That being said, I do believe that planes hit the towers. I don't believe that a plane hit the Pentagon. I don't believe that a plane went down in Shanksville. And this is where it gets messy because the people that were on that plane that went down in Pennsylvania that made those calls to their families and all of the things, I don't believe that those were fake. I believe those people were gunned down. I believe that that plane landed and the people were taken off and they were all murdered. There's been a few reports of a plane landing in Ohio that happened to have the exact same was not transponder number, whatever the license plate for a plane is. I don't know the terms, but it had that number and they had people on it that were escorted off premises, and that's the last we hear about that. And it's just, there's way too much controversy to say that it wasn't a thing. Now with the thermite, okay, 2 weeks before 9/11, the buildings were evacuated multiple times, and they were told that it was for routine fire drills or maintenance or something along these lines. The problem is that by eyewitnesses, dudes walked in with really, really full duffel bags and left with really, really empty duffel bags. Now, some have suggested that they actually went in and were doing like work into the main support beams of the building and placing small explosives for a controlled demolition. am of that belief. Thermite, I didn't see anything as far as the videos and the evidence that would suggest that thermite was used. Maybe it was. I don't inherently believe so. But I've said this so many times. I've been to the Pentagon more times I can count. I promise you that was not a plane that hit the Pentagon. That was clearly a rocket, clearly and obviously to me. But I would take all of it back. I would put down the conspiratorial tinfoil hat and just be a normal average Joe Blow if anybody could explain to me how Building 7 fell when it wasn't hit by any planes. The official narrative is that flaming debris fell from one of the Twin Towers onto the roof, which started a fire that somehow brought the entire building down in under 3 seconds. That's not how architecture works. And I have anybody that wants to speak in or DM me or whatever and comment on this video and explain what they think that was, I would love to hear it. But yeah, I absolutely believe that 9/11 was a inside job, and I'm using that term very loosely. It very well could have been done by the State Department. It could have been done by the Department of Defense, because right before that, was it Donald Rumsfeld came forward and said that they were missing like $1.5 trillion or something crazy. The owner of the building apparently had just put terrorist insurance on that, which is crazy because at the time, that's not even an insurance that was offered by most companies. He had to go to like Lloyd's of London for that. American Airlines, the United States government put like millions and millions of options against American Airlines before that took place. And when American dipped, the U.S. government made crazy money. There's way too much. And then I'm not even going to bring up the whole dancing Jews conversation, because honestly, no matter which way you look, there was really high up people at multiple levels of multiple governments that benefited from those towers getting hit and the narrative being spun that way. I know I'm kind of leaving it open-ended here, but that's about what I believe.
Yeah, I wanted to interject. Ryan Dawson is a big-time conspiracy theorist on this, but he thinks that Larry Silverstein really did just get lucky. He's the guy who owned the trade towers, and he did take out terrorism insurance because they had been previously bombed by truck bombs in January of 1993. So that would have been a reasonable thing to try to do. But he tried to make two claims for terrorist compensation. He tried to make two insurance claims. He claimed that the two planes were two separate attacks instead of just one. So he wanted, double the payout. And a court ruled against him on that. They said, no, it just counts as one attack. You're only getting one payout, not two.
Right.
And I think he died like 10 years ago. Larry Silverstein was his name.
Yeah, which is, dude, I'm not even trying to make a Jew joke here. That is the Jewiest name I have ever heard in my life. Silverstein. Good God.
But I'm with Ryan Dawson. I believe he probably did not really know and just got lucky.
I could imagine that. You know what I mean? I believe that there are certain instances where some stuff really just is a coincidence. That can happen. What I'm saying is that no other building in New York City carried terrorist insurance. I could imagine a world where that was a coincidence, if not for all of the other like addendums. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And I could be wrong. Maybe that was just one of those things, but I don't think that like he was the kingpin on this one by any means. I think he might've got tipped off like 6 months prior, a year prior, and was like, hey bro, you need to make sure you have terrorist insurance by the end of August 2001. Like, wait, what do you mean? Listen, I've already talked to Lloyd's of London. They're expecting a call. You need to make sure you have that and that you're paid up on whatever. Trust me. And I think he probably got a tap on the shoulder and was given like that much info or something. I don't know. But I mean, the Twin Towers had already had that bomb go off in the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, January of 1993. And then that quickly left the news cycle because of a thing called Waco.
Yep. So it's not like it was unprecedented for these buildings to have something happen, but to the level of carrying insurance for it. So like in the time the World Trade Centers were built to 1993, they had one instance of something going down. nobody thought that it would be a wise investment or a wise use of the funds to put terrorist insurance. You see what I'm saying? Like, maybe it was a coincidence. I don't personally believe so. I could be wrong. I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, with the Beijing situation, with only the information that we have right now, what do you think this is? I personally am of the belief that this may have been something of a domestic terrorist or a dude that was trying to commit a very loud suicide or something. Well, this is going on YouTube. A very loud self-delete. God, I hate that. I hate that so much. You know, no, I'm not changing my speech. If the video gets doxxed, it gets doxxed. Fuck them.
We're at 113.
Yeah, like we're deep in, but even still, you have to say like sewer slide or self-delete. I'm not doing it. Whatever, YouTube algorithm, deal with it. Deal with me. But yeah, this could have been a very loud suicide. Possibly. Maybe he was trying to recreate a 9/11 situation. Maybe homeboy really did have a heart attack and just crash into this building accidentally, and it just really looks bad. What's your take on this?
Yeah, just a loud suicide, in my opinion. I'm actually Google searching right now. What conspiracies are there about the plane that just crashed?
I thought you were going to look at what conspiracies there are about China. I'm like, buddy, I don't think your server can take what's about to hit you. Hold on now. Yeah. The plane. But that's the thing, because the state came in and scrubbed it and swept things under the rug as quickly as they did. I don't even think there's really going to be, if there is conspiracies around it, it's going to be outsiders. It's not going to be like Chinese citizens that are saying there's some wild shit going on. And if they are, they're certainly not posting about it. You know what I mean?
There's a circulating rumor on social media that the pilot was Liu Junhua, a senior executive at China CITIC Bank. I haven't seen it debunked yet. Number 2, Chinese 9/11 or political attack. Number 3, state-sponsored cover-up. Okay, I'm turning up nothing, but there's a lot of silence, so we just don't know.
Yeah. So, we don't know yet. It's still very fresh. It's only a few days old. Give it time to let it simmer, and we might start seeing some people, murmuring about what they believe really went down. Maybe not. Maybe I am just completely off base, and it's just going to be one of those things that just gets chalked up to like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. We'll see. We will stay up on it, though. Hopefully next week we'll have more things to talk about on that one. Anyway, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen again, and we are going to talk now about South Africa. Yes, we are jumping over to a whole other continent, because South Africa, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiments going on around the world right now. But the specific part about South Africa. So I personally have a network of people that I know, people that I trust that live in South Africa. They happen to be of the non-melanated variety. They're white, if you will. And they call themselves Afrikaan. Like they are born and raised, they're 4th generation, all the things. And there has been a genocide against white people in South Africa for years now. Trump even acknowledged it to the South African president when he visited the Oval Office last year, I think. And as the president was like, oh, no, we don't have that. It's not like that at all. Trump pulled up a slideshow of pictures of mass cemeteries and mass graves and shit. And the president was still, he was fighting very hard to crawfish out of that one and say, no, this is fake news. This is this. And Trump's like, I also know people that live there that have said that atrocities are being committed. It was a whole thing. It was very embarrassing for the South African president. But that being said, South Africa has a growing anti-immigrant backlash right now. The problem is, with most of the world, the anti-immigrant conversation, more often than not, either means anti-Muslim immigrant conversation, or in the case of America, the anti-south of the border immigration conversation. These are the two big ones that we hear mostly. The anti-immigrant conversation in South Africa, it's being roped into the Muslim conversation, although it has way more racial undertones than anything else. Let's learn about this together, y'all.
Foreigners are fleeing South Africa as anti-immigrant sentiment surges.
I'm crying because I'm living this small children.
But why do some South Africans want undocumented foreigners out? There have been protests against foreigners, and vigilantes have attacked migrants, even if they have legal status, in recent months. Anti-foreigner groups say South Africa is overrun with illegal immigrants who take jobs, use up scarce public services, and are responsible for high crime rates. A Human Sciences Research Council poll showed 42% of South Africans would welcome no foreigners, up from a third in 2021. In an Afrobarometer survey, 7 out of 10 South Africans said they see immigrants' economic impact as negative, with an overwhelming 85% saying authorities should cut the number of refugees or stop them. A National Statistics Office survey in 2023 showed there were 3.1 million migrants in South Africa, equivalent to about 4.1% of the population, down from 5.6% a decade ago. Although anti-immigrant campaigners say that does not account for people without legal status, it is low by international standards. In Britain it's 17%, Canada 22%, and Australia 30%, according to 2024 UN data.
Whoa, a third of Australia's population right now are immigrants? I didn't realize it was that bad. I knew Britain was around 17%, so we're a little under 1 out of every 5 people living in Britain right now as an immigrant. I didn't know Canada was that high, and I certainly didn't know that Australia was that high. That's wild, but all right, let's keep going.
Political analyst Zolani Dube.
Here, the scapegoats are the immigrants, and especially the African immigrants, because in South Africa is a country of immigrants of all sorts of race. We have Muslims, we have Indians, we have Caucasians. But the targets here are those who are powerless and are those who are accessible to us, of which are the African immigrants.
Health and education services are struggling across South Africa, but that is mostly due to underinvestment and corruption, say economists. A World Bank report from 2018 also showed that for every migrant employed, about 2 jobs are created for South Africans through business activity, because they make money and spend it on goods and services. Historically, the apartheid government used migrant labour from all over Africa to keep wages low in gold mines and undermine unions. Now a third of people are out of work, one of the world's highest unemployment rates. Inequality is the highest in the world by some measures. That fuels anger that is easy to direct onto migrants. Politicians also stoke it around election time. The government says it condemns the violence against immigrants. But South Africa's leaders have been criticised by other African states and civil society for failing to stamp out the violence.
Yeah, South Africa's not going to have violence stamped out. I hate to tell y'all. So, and this is going to sound crazy because we're in America right now. Most countries that you would consider the West, America included with that, have an inherent value on human life. Like we truly do. A lot of countries, not all, a lot of countries that are not considered the West have very little value of human life inherently within their culture. A person getting stabbed is the same as you running over a squirrel on your way to work this morning. Like, what difference does that make? Okay, and so? And it's a very weird concept for a lot of Americans to grasp. South Africa has that type of mentality towards human life. And I've mentioned this story before, but there was a situation where the dude that owns Q Firearms, right? The guy that made the Honey Badger, the guy that made the Creedmoor rounds, all of these things. He owns a large farm in South Africa. He absolutely loves the country. He loves the land, all the things. He doesn't live there. He goes there, right? Cool. He has people that work his farm for him. And there was a situation between 2 of the people. There was 3 people inside of this house where the workers live. One of them wanted potatoes for dinner that night. The other one wanted yams, or so, I forget what it was. It was something very stupid like this. There was an exchange of words. One homeboy pulled out a knife and stabbed the other one to death and said, "We're having potatoes tonight." The third person in the house called and said, "Hey, this just went down. You should know about it." He said, "All right, cool." So they had to be locked inside the house, basically on house arrest, until the police could arrive to do their investigation and make the arrest and whatever, for 48 hours. Like the cops didn't show up to a murder for 2 days. These two other dudes were just kind of chilling in the house with a body in the kitchen, just kind of going about their day. And it wasn't even like, oh, that guy was a crazy person. He was psycho. He was no, that's pretty like TIA. Like, this is Africa. That's how it gets down there. So whenever they're saying that they're hoping the violence will stop when it comes to something that even the black South Africans call a threat, there's not going to be a stop of violence. I can promise you that. So, okay. Wow. Let's read this article. It's going to tell us a little bit more about it. This is from Fox. Thousands of police deployed across South Africa as deadly anti-immigration protests spread in multiple cities. So thousands of police officers were deployed. We just talked about that. The unrest involving thousands of protesters broke out ahead of a June 30th deadline set by some organizers demanding the departure of illegal migrants, according to Reuters. The marches reportedly drew thousands of mostly poor or unemployed South Africans who say foreign migrants have taken jobs by accepting lower wages while also fueling higher crime rates. Okay, so I'm not going to say that the crime rates may not be affected by the immigrants. What I will say is South Africans have been going on a spree of killing and slaughtering entire families of white South Africans that own farmland as a way to reclaim that farmland for South Africans. And you would think, with this being their mantra, that they would put people there to work the farms, to push economy to the black South Africans and all of these things. Unfortunately, that's not happening. They are killing these people to reclaim their land and then doing nothing with it. They're leaving the tractors to basically rust it to the point of non-repair where they're set. The crops are completely rotten. The land is no longer aggregable. It's going to take a whole lot of work to make it useful again. That has been the vibe for a decade in South Africa. It only just started getting talked about a few years ago. So to say that, oh, they took our jobs. No, y'all weren't going to work those jobs anyway. Let's be very honest. And we're talking about using it for cheap labor in mines, which I don't know if many of you are aware of how most African countries use their manpower to mine for minerals and materials. The people that are rioting weren't going to go work in the mines. That's a crazy misnomer there. Anyway, the marches reportedly drew thousands. We talked about that already. I'm sorry. At least 4 people have been killed as violence and looting spread across the country. Oh, that's a lot less than I thought it would be, to be honest with you. The clashes marks the largest migration-related protest since the anti-migrant violence erupted in South Africa in 2008. While thousands of foreign nationals from other African countries had already fled ahead of Tuesday's so-called deadline, tensions have remained high. Multiple businesses and properties were vandalized in several areas, according to reports. Also worth mentioning, they were vandalized by South Africans, not by the immigrants. Do with that information what you want. The anticipation of further attacks, many shops reported closed with foreign workers staying home. Yeah, I'll bet. Landlords in Durban and Johannesburg also evicted foreign tenants illegally to avoid further trouble, witnesses alleged. Reuters added that 100 Congolese nationals were reported sleeping on the streets in Durban. Yeah, you'll definitely have that. While many marches were considered peaceful, police reported that they arrested several looters and fired rubber bullets to disperse crowds. National broadcaster SABC added that protesters looted shacks belonging to foreign nationals in the Soweto township. In Thembiza, a suburb of Johannesburg, rioters reportedly threw stones at police and suspected migrants, with witnesses saying sporadic gunfire was heard. Again, absolutely. Police deployed tactical vehicles and fired shots in Benoni, east of Johannesburg, after being confronted by a group of roughly 500 protesters. Thousands of police officers have been deployed nationwide while their military was placed on standby, a defense spokesperson said in a statement. To those who intend to break the law tomorrow, our message is simple. Do not test the resolve of the state. That's from Lieutenant General Mosikili. Yeah, that works. The March and March group, that's the ones that were holding the signs we were looking at in that video a second ago, one of the more prominent organizers behind the unrest, addressed the violence, saying it cannot be held responsible for spontaneous incidents breaking out during the demonstrations. Unfortunately, there's a direct quote here, We can't be in every single community telling them how to behave. That's from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. The leader of the March and March group. He told Reuters that 2 weeks ago. So the spokesperson said the group plans to hold weekly marches until its demands are met, despite the government rejecting the deadline and saying only authorities can enforce immigration laws. For the next 6 months, we are asking for our national resources to be used to take these illegal immigrants out of this country. From building to building, they must go. Wow. Despite South Africa's high unemployment rate, the country remains Africa's largest economy. A third of the population are unemployed, and this is still considered Africa's largest economy. That one also, let that one sink in. Let it marinate. The immigrant population stands at about 3 million, or roughly 4% of the total, according to Stats SA. Wow. So there we have it. We have a lot of wildness going down in South Africa. I don't know how that's really going to shake out when all things are said and done here. I'm hoping that violence will stop. I'm also acutely aware that TIA and Africa is going to do African shit. So we will see how that shakes out, honestly. And it also kind of makes sense, though, because when they were slaughtering the white people in South Africa and nothing was getting better, they had to find a new group to blame for all their shit. And so obviously it's the migrants. That's the reason why these people are unemployed and all these things. It's not because they're not doing what they need to do to, grow their own economy and all these things. It's they have to have a bad guy to riot against. Fair enough. Moving on to the next conversation, we're going to stop in North Carolina. Authorities end a takeover at a North Carolina jail hours after inmates overpower guards. This went down yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. I saw the thing and I wanted to talk about it last night on the Cult, but I thought it would actually go over a whole lot better here on the Cajun Knight. So let's learn about this one together. North Carolina prison riot and prison takeover.
Yeah, this is obviously a concern at the Bertie Martin Regional jail. It actually took the SBI and the FBI, along with other law enforcement, to fight to take back control of the facility there. And as you mentioned, it all comes after other safety concerns in Vance County, and this is something that experts are seeing across the state. It all began early this morning. 88 inmates and 3 guards inside the Bertie Martin Regional Jail when the call came in that the jail had been taken over. Inmates taking 2 guards hostage who were injured. Eventually, hours later, law enforcement able to regain control. Tonight, lingering questions over what caused that takeover and whether it's a safety risk. Sheriff Tyrone Ruffin addressing those concerns today.
There's a lot of questions about the conditions of the jail, a lot of questions about staffing at the jail, and those are things that I do not have because I'm not over the jail.
The Bertie Martin Regional Jail serves both counties, but it isn't run by either sheriff's office. It's run by a jail authority appointed by county commissioners. But that's not the case in Vance County, which has seen crowding and safety complaints after 2 inmates escaped, and then more recently another inmate tried to escape. Tonight, commissioners saying the sheriff has agreed to a public safety meeting to address their concerns. The North Carolina Sheriff's Association says between local detention centers and state detention centers, funding is an issue. The state budget set to include raises for law enforcement and corrections.
For some jails across the state, they're fully staffed. In others, they are short-handed and working to fill those vacancies. Pay is certainly a part of it. If you're working in a jail where you're not making any more than you could make in a fast food restaurant, most folks would choose to work in the fast food restaurants.
But as for this incident, he says he's grateful for the quick response to end things peacefully.
It's a coordinated response. There's no territorial issues. It's all hands on deck when something happens. And they were able to secure the facility, get everyone out and in custody.
As for this most recent incident in Bertie County, it is still under investigation. In the meantime, 80 inmates that were there have now been transferred to other facilities. Reporting live, Tom George, ABC.
So, all right. And they did bring up a very good point here. I don't know how many of y'all ever watched that show, Orange is the New Black. Now, before the eye rolls and the groans happen, listen, I watched the show until season 2. I did not like the overtly crazy liberal agenda that was being promoted in the show. Okay. However, they did highlight a real issue within our prison system. Prison guards are not paid very well, and that's not a rule across the board. Some places get paid better than others. It really depends on who owns the jail and how it's ran. Don't get me wrong, but he made a very good point just now, the commissioner, who says that some of these prison guards are getting paid about what you get paid at a fast food restaurant. Now, depending on what your motives and what your goals are, a lot of people will start off, at least in Louisiana anyway, they'll start off working at the jail for a few years, and then they'll go and work in law enforcement, because here you can't just hire on to, any old department of police. You have to either have a degree in criminal justice, or have 4 years of military, or have worked, I think it's 5 years as a prison guard. So most of the people that are working at a prison are not there as a career choice. They're there as a stepping stone. And that's fine and good. I got no issues with that. What I am saying is that when you do that, you will have such a quick turnover that eventually you're going to have gaps. You're going to have blind spots. And that's for anywhere. It doesn't matter what industry you're working in. I've worked at facilities, even as an instrument tech, where they understood full well that you would get a kid fresh out of school who wants to get his hands on in some sort of instrumentation field. And he would get hired on and work for this company for about 2 or 3 years, and then he's going to roll on to greener pastures. And they were completely fine with that. You had your core group of old guys that got there early, and they just pretty much decided that this was the rut they were going to stay in, and they were good. But aside from that, they were completely comfortable with this place being treated like it was a training facility. And they understood it was going to be a crazy turnover on employees. They didn't mind. And that's crazy to me as a small business owner myself. I can't imagine being okay with that, but whatever. If it makes sense, with the money and the financials, then whatever. But to the point of this, with a prison riot, this is not a small refinery somewhere that makes bubble gum. Okay, this is a prison with violent criminals, and you probably should pay your people well enough to where you'll get good quality employees that are going to stay there for the long haul and are going to know their sectors, and they're going to know what is required of them for their jobs. That's just me. I don't know. The prison system is woefully understaffed and underpaid, in my personal opinion. And again, very much state to state. It's crazy how many of these prisons are ran like it's a glorified daycare. And I mean, the perfect example of that would be Epstein. Right? The whole Epstein situation. More things keep coming out about what happened with his death, allegedly his death, and all of these things. And these two guards that, keep in mind, this prison has held John Gotti. This prison it's currently holding Diddy, if I'm not mistaken. Like this is a high profile prison. It's not, not a celebrity prison by any means, but there has been some high profile inmates. You would think that the guards, being aware that they are currently within their block, have one of the most famous criminals on earth at the time. Everybody was talking about Epstein. The video shows that they were asleep and were covered up with like blankets and shit. You could see that on camera. You see my point. You're not getting the staff that you need, and especially in a high-profile situation like Epstein, what chance is there for a situation in bumfuck Nowheresville, Vance County Jail in North Carolina got? I don't know. I wish so many things were different, y'all. Anyway. All right, so we talked about that one. Good things. Moving forward here, let's talk about this one. This was interesting. So, a national healthcare fraud takedown results in 455 defendants charged in connection with over $6.5 billion, big boy billions, in alleged fraud. This is actually from a .gov. This is from the Department of Justice, the Office of Public Affairs. They released this statement, and we're going to watch a quick little news clip about it. But here's the over-under. Record Medicaid fraud charges, largest number of states participating in healthcare fraud takedown history. So over 45 states were involved with this. This wasn't like just a California thing or just what was the one with all the Somalians, Minnesota or some shit like that. Let's talk about this. The Justice Department announced today, I don't know what it was. As of time of recording, I think this might have been released yesterday, but this is what I'm reading here. The Justice Department today announced the 2026 National Healthcare Fraud Takedown, which resulted in charges against 455 defendants, including 90 doctors and other licensed medical professionals, for their alleged participation in healthcare fraud and opioid abuse schemes involving over $6.5 billion in false claims and significant patient harm, including death. Yeah, because opioids are absolutely, please, if you have a loved one that's on them, help them get off of it. And not just jump on Kratom. I would rather them be on Kratom than opioids, but when they start needing the Kratom as much as they need the opiate, anyway. Today's takedown represents a new era in federal, state, and international cooperation to combat healthcare fraud. Cases in 56 federal districts and 45 U.S. states and territories, with 50 state Medicaid fraud control units participating, the most in department history. In addition, unprecedented international cooperation over the 2-week takedown resulted in apprehension and return to the United States of the following healthcare fraudsters. One defendant in Kyrenia, in connection with over $3.7 billion scheme. 2 defendants in Estonia in connection with a previously charged $10.6 billion scheme. And in the Philippines, one of the FBI's most wanted fraudsters in connection with a previously charged $1.2 billion telemedicine fraud scheme. The takedown involves the cutting-edge use of data analytics to target the worst actors. The seizures of over $182 million in cash, luxury vehicles, jewelry, and other assets. A full spectrum accountability for all criminal actors, from doctors' offices to corporate boardrooms. Yeah, this was a big boy fraud here. This is, if you're going to do it, if you're going to break the law, do it to this level. You know what I mean? If you're going to break the law to like hold up a liquor store and just empty the cash register, that's not worth 15 in jail. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to risk it all for billions of dollars and possibly end up in jail, I mean, the juice might be worth the squeeze, man. That's just my hot take. Today's coordinated enforcement action involves a whole of government approach. I don't think I've ever seen whole of government with dashes using that context board, but all right. Including actions by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to suspend 1,079 providers and revoke billing privileges for 1,403 providers. 48 civil monetary payment settlements amounting to over $73 million, over 1,400 provider exclusions, and 25 actions by the Department of Health and Human Services under the civil monetary penalties law, seeking more than $10 billion in payments to the Medicare Trust Fund from payments that CMS, which is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, caught and suspended before the funds were paid to the fraudulent providers. Civil charges against 13 defendants for $14.8 million in healthcare fraud schemes, as well as civil settlements with 31 defenders totaling $23 million. 928 administrative cases by the Drug Enforcement Agency. Yeah, the DEA got involved with this one, seeking the revocation of authority to handle and or prescribe controlled substances since October 1 of 2025. This is crazy, y'all. And I don't want to go way too into it here, but there was a fraudulent wound care scheme. There is a fraudulent, hold on, there was more to it here. Data Fusion Center, Financial Intelligence Review Team, and Data Analytics Enhancements. They break down the entirety of the scope of this. I do like this chart, though. So Medicare claims for allografts. There's a type of a graft, right? So in 2019, there was, it says 0.2 billion. I think we could just call it 200 million cases or dollars. $200 million in 2019. All right. $400 million in 2020. $800 million in 2021. Okay. All right. A little uptick. 1.2 billion in 2022. Okay. The medical industry, especially during COVID, got a little wonky. I understand this. I don't like it, but I get it. 3.4 billion in 2023. Right there alone, just off of these numbers, from 2019 to 2023, in 4 years for allografts, we had a uptick of Medicare claims from 200 million to 3.4 billion. That alone should have started the investigation. And I think that might be what really started raising some red flags. So we're at 3.4 billion in 2023, 7.5 billion in 2024, 14.4 billion in 2025. So they just started going up by a factor of like 100% and just kept on trucking. So, all good things must come to an end. So there we have it. And they show some of these luxury cars and boats. This was a yacht and a Bentley Continental GT purchased with the proceeds of alleged fraud. Yeah, they have to use the term alleged at this time, but yeah. They also did things with patient harm and how many people were genuinely injured as a result of this fraud. Then we talk about the Medicaid fraud. They do talk about the Minnesota healthcare fraud takedown that just went down not too terribly long ago, right? The Somalians and all that shit. But apparently this goes way deeper and way further than what we thought so. Then we have illegal opioid distribution, and there's a whole subsection about that one. So the states that were involved with this, all right, let's go down the list here. The cases are being prosecuted by Healthcare Fraud Unit's National Rapid Response, Florida, Gulf Coast, Los Angeles, Midwest, New England, Northeast, Texas, West Coast. Strike Forces, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Alabama, Arizona, Central District of California, Southern District of California, District of Colorado, District of Connecticut, Delaware, Middle District of Florida, North District of Florida, Southern District of Florida, North District of Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, a lot of New York here, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana. Yeah, it goes down the whole list. Puerto Rico is in here, Utah, Vermont, Virgin Islands, Washington, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Alabama, pretty much all of them. 45 of our 50 states were involved in this, just to give you a real good scope of what it is. So realistically, someone that might have been affected by this fraud. So I don't know, y'all. I'm happy to see that justice is possibly going to get served, or if nothing else, maybe that our tax dollars will stop getting spent in this regard to the tune of billions of dollars and shit. I don't know. That makes me happy. But let's go ahead and watch this little news clip to learn more about it together.
This is a Fox News alert, and a massive bust announced this week. DOJ charging a total of 455 people, including doctors, across 45 states for their alleged role in $6.5 billion worth of fraud schemes. That massive takedown involves a heartbreaking story about an 18-year-old college basketball player who died on his campus. A doctor is now in custody. And the administrator of the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Oz, who I spoke to earlier, says he is not playing games anymore.
This is a war on fraud, the likes of which you have never seen. So that kid was hurt irreparably, passed away because nothing was done about these fraudsters, and they went right after it. Their company billed over $90 million while a child was buried by their family.
We spoke about this case and more, and here is our interview.
Welcome to Strike Gently. We've got blankets and
Dr. Oz, thank you so much for being here. I want to start by asking you about a beautiful young man, 18 years old. We have his picture, Cajun Francis. We often think about fraud having financial victims, but this is a human victim. Tell me about Cajun.
So I spoke to Caden's mom, Julian, and wonderful kid, A student, was doing just fine. And she got caught up, the mom, in this scam where they were trying to scare parents, and then they would offer these tests to screen the hearts of these kids to make sure that they were healthy. The problem here is apparently the doctor never really looked at the tests. We believe that because the Department of Justice identified that within 11 seconds of getting the test results on this wonderful young man, they said he was fine. Within a month, he was dead. And if you actually look at the autopsy, the mom spoke to me about this. Your heart normally is the size of a fist. His heart was 2.5 times bigger than this, almost the size of a basketball. I mean, big heart. And when you have a heart that large and you push it because you're playing sports, it'll stop sometimes. And that's what happened to this poor young man. Mother lost him. And in her words, she says he was like any street criminal who murdered somebody. That's how clear it was to her that he was a bad person. And she wants that doctor, in her words, to rot in jail so he doesn't hurt more people out on the streets, even though her son will never come back. And you beautifully point out the reality that these folks who are willing to steal from our most vulnerable are more than happy to take your health. They'll steal your life. And that's the pathology we're dealing with. The human cost of the fraud that we have tolerated, and especially since COVID, is massive. But it also corrupts the fundamental infrastructure of our social networks, of our programs to help people who are, as Hubert Humphrey said, I'm in the Hubert Humphrey building right now, the Health and Human Services building. He said it was the moral test of government to take care of those at the dawn of life, our children. Obviously, the system failed Caden. Those at the twilight of life, our seniors. Hospice is a good example where we're failing them, and those living in the shadows. And we have examples in folks in all three of those categories who have been hurt. And when you let that kind of money get taken out of the system, you encourage more corruption, more crime. It's about $100 billion a year that we're tracking.
Dr. Oz, just so I understand, because you're a heart doctor, so this doctor was allegedly giving an EKG that was not medically correct, clearing this young man to go out there, and then he dies. And you've spoken to his mom just on a human level. How is she doing? Because I would be so upset, so angry. You gave us a quote from her, but you've spoken to her.
I have spoken to her, and I've been connecting by text as well since the conversation. I spoke to his older brother, by the way, who said that Caden was, although I'm older than him, he was always the person that all of us admired. He just did everything well. And he was playing college basketball as an A student. So he was doing a lot of things, juggling a lot of balls in the air. And I'm thinking about the fact that this wonderful family, they're from Florida, by the way. So people say this is a politically motivated, these people living in a red state, right? I don't know if they're Democrats or Republicans. Who cares? When a child dies, that doesn't matter anymore. We have to prevent these types of criminals from thriving in our ecosystem. And the problem really did accentuate during COVID, because we taught a lot of criminals, including multinational organizations, many of them foreign, that they could steal from the federal government and we would not come after them. And we taught that in 4 years of mismanagement under the Biden administration. The president came in and said, no more. And he cares so much about it that, as you know, we appointed the vice president to lead the anti-fraud task force. With the event we had on Tuesday, we talked about Caden and several other cases. You know, we have hundreds of cases. Just in 2 weeks, we brought to the American people on Tuesday $6.5 billion of money now saved and brought back into our coffers. And Kelly, the human cost is apparent, the affordability issues there, because if you stop the fraud in Medicare, you will double the life expectancy of this precious program.
So, all right, he's gone over a lot here. Let's break this down. This particular case, and there's thousands of people that might also be able to come forward and say, no, I was a part of this fraud and I had a family member die. I myself was injured, whatever the case is. This kid they basically coerced his mother to get a heart scan done on him and all of these athletes. And as long as they were in good health, it wouldn't have mattered. And they didn't actually do a scan. They claimed that they did, and they pocketed the money that they got from Medicare to do this scan that they didn't do. And so, you know, as long as nobody got hurt, whatever. And of course, they're going after collegiate athletes. These dudes are supposed to be in the epitome of health. They would have never expected that one of them actually had a super enlarged heart or something like that. But it did, and that was one case. Then we also can talk about the opioids. How many people are being prescribed this type of medication, these drugs that shouldn't be, but the doctors that are prescribing them are getting massive kickbacks from these pharmaceutical companies. And then also, to the point that he just made, $6.5 billion are now back into the coffers of Medicare. Y'all understand this is why insurance is so expensive? Because of fraud like this. It's not just this case. There's levels to this. There's small fraud, there's big fraud to whatever level and degree. This is a part of the reason why health insurance is what it is because there are so many doctors that are gaming the system as a way to make their money from tax dollars because they know that the US government will pay. Like if you ever talk to like a therapist or something, I was talking to a therapist at the VA once upon a time, and I asked, he's a really good therapist. And I was like, dude, why are you working here? Unless you just have a heart for the veterans, which if that's the case, all the things, but like, dude, why don't you start your own practice somewhere and like start your own thing and just make the money for yourself? And he broke it down. For one, he likes the guaranteed schedule. He punches in, he punches out, he's good to go. You know what I mean? So that's nice. All right, cool. Secondly, he doesn't have to like beat the streets for clientele. The VA, like y'all, you know, he says, y'all come to me, so I don't have to like find clients and like build a clientele, which, all right, I can understand that too. And also he's like, I never have to worry about getting paid. I'm like, what do you mean? Doesn't insurance cover it? He's like, yeah, for most insurance will cover it, but the VA is tax dollars. I get paid regardless. And I'm like, okay, that makes way more sense. So it's just easier. So cool. And then also, yes, he had a heart for veterans because like a lot of his family, his dad was a veteran, war veteran, you know, lots of PTSD and shit. But my point is, it's the same thing with like a rental, right? If you have land and you decide to build housing there, you could build an apartment complex and you may have to deal with, you know, people that may or may not make their rent payments at the first of the month. Or you can make it Section 8 housing, and you know that the tenants are going to tear your shit up. You know that for a fact, but you also know for a fact that the government is going to be paying the rent, so you're going to make your money regardless at the first of the month, no matter what. There's ways to do this above board, and in the medical industry, there's way too many ways to do this underhandedly. And thankfully, the fraud has been discovered in this regard. And hopefully this could start the conversation and get the ball rolling to stop other frauds in other areas of our medical industry. So to the doctors and the staffers and the people that just did this and had people injured and killed as a result of this fraud, fuck you. And also good on our current administration for weeding this out. So all the things and all the stuff. Let's move on to the next topic of conversation this evening. Good members of the retinue here. I was about to say good cult members here. I thought this was interesting. There was a massive drug operation at a Florida church property that just led to 50 arrest warrants. This went down last night. So let's read about it. And now I got a video we're going to watch about it. Holly Hill, Florida, or Holly Hill, excuse me. Wow. A major multi-agency law enforcement operation Tuesday morning targeted an alleged drug trafficking organization investigators say is linked to multiple shootings and overdose deaths across Volusia County, including a raid at a property of Greater Harvest Ministries Church in Holly Hill. The operation, dubbed Operation Holy Rollers. I like that. That's a good name. That's a real good name. Stemmed from a long-term narcotics investigation and included the execution of 10 search warrants and more than 50 arrest warrants throughout Holly Hill, Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach, according to Volusia Sheriff's Office. One of the primary targets was the Greater Harvest Ministries property at 1301 Center Avenue in Holly Hill, where sheriff's deputies, SWAT personnel, and other law enforcement partners served a search warrant early Tuesday. Sheriff Mike Chitwood said investigators believe the property was being used as a headquarters by an organization known as the Cutthroat Killers. The Cutthroat Killers were using the church as their headquarters. Yeah. What we are able to do is secure 10 search warrants for properties today, and we have over 50 arrest warrants for a group that calls themselves the Cutthroat Killers. That's what Chitwood, the sheriff, said during the operation. Video released by the sheriff's office showed tactical teams surrounding the church property and ordering occupants to exit before officers forced entry and detained individuals inside. While standing outside Greater Harvest Ministries, Chitwood criticized the alleged use of the church property for criminal activity. Well, obviously, he says this is a church on Sunday that is tax exempt, I'm sure, that is being used as a headquarters by a bunch of thugs. Yeah, absolutely. Authorities said the investigation identified suspects allegedly connected to approximately 3 overdose deaths in Oak Hill and New Smyrna. Smyrna Beach, as well as non-fatal overdose in Edgewater. Investigators also linked members of the group to multiple shootings in Daytona Beach. Direct quote from Chitwood again. They're responsible for about 3 overdose deaths ranging. Oh, we already talked about that. So basically, they're just taking his quotes and just typing them and then retyping them. The sheriff said investigators specifically targeted what they described as the organization's headquarters at the church property. A second search warrant was served at a residence on South Keach Street in Daytona Beach as part of the coordinated effort. Chitwood said authorities were receiving reports throughout the morning that several warrant targets had already been taken into custody. The sheriff's office said the operation was conducted alongside the Daytona Beach Police Department's Operation Icebreakers 2. Again, excellent names. And included assistance from the FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, East and West Volusia Narcotics Task Force, DNET, and Overdose Task Force SWAT teams from Volusia, Flagler, Seminole, and Brevard County Sheriff's Offices, the Southeast Volusia Regional SWAT Team, and Holly Hill Police Department. Authorities have not yet, oh Lord have mercy, the authorities have not yet released the names of those arrested or specific charges resulting from Tuesday's operation. The Volusia Sheriff's Office said additional details are expected as investigators continue processing evidence and serving outstanding warrants. Okay, now let's watch this video of the forced entry of the church. I think that's wild as hell, but let's check it out.
On Eyewitness News at noon, a major criminal enterprise has been dismantled in Volusia County after several agencies served search warrants early this morning. It's a story you'll see only on 9. Good afternoon to you. I'm Alexa Lorenzo. Channel 9 Volusia County reporter Demi Johnson rode along with the sheriff's office as the SWAT team raided a church. She's live in Holly Hill outside that church this afternoon. And Demi, this investigation is part of a federal wiretap.
Alexa, this is actually an operation we got involved in 2 years ago with the Daytona Beach Police Department. It was called Operation Icebreaker. And what happened this morning is part 2 of that operation. But it now involves the Volusia Sheriff's Office, multiple SWAT teams from different counties, the FBI and FDLE. And only our cameras were there as the Sheriff's Office raided this church this morning. Take a look.
Damn.
And the sheriff tells us the pastor of the Greatest Harvest Ministries in Holly Hill is actually related to these gang members who were using the church to run a drug operation. This was just one location hit this morning. Daytona Beach Police served 5 search warrants and the sheriff's office served another 5. Both the sheriff and Daytona Beach Police Chief Jakari Young say the more than 50 suspects from this gang are involved in multiple shootings and overdose deaths all across Volusia County.
They're using it for the cover of their cutthroat killer gang that we know from investigation over the past year that this was where they were storing their dope and their guns.
Extremely dangerous, violent criminals, pushing dope, fentanyl, crack, you name it, they're pushing it.
And you're looking live right now at some of those investigators going through evidence seized inside of this house. Investigators tell us this gang was actually responsible for a shooting at Buc-ee's just 2 weeks ago. Law enforcement at this hour still working to take, again, more than 50 people into custody involved in this operation.
They did a shooting at a Buc-ee's? Fucking fry him alive. Throw him under the jail. You look, you do what you want. You don't be fucking with the Lord's house or with Boosie's. What are we doing here? These people, they're fucking animals. You see that shit? Also, side tangent here. To the head pastor of that church, old Terry Brown, my brother in Christ, it might be time to just pack it in. I don't think you're going to be able to maintain your pastoralness as of this time. Anyway, yeah, Sam, I see your hand, brother. Go ahead.
That dirty Judas done defiled the Lord's house.
And the beaver.
Look, that's second hand. We got more pressing matters. How can you say that you are an upholding man? How can you be that a man of the cloth and be slanging dope out of the Lord's house?
So,
Jesus.
all right. I don't know if the pastor was in the mix on this. He absolutely had to have known what was going on, obviously. But I don't know if he was like a member of the gang, if they were threatening his life, if they weren't allowed to use it. Like, I don't know the nuances. I am saying that this church it's over for him, regardless.
Yeah, that man, he needs to get right with the good Lord because he fucked in the head.
Dude, 50 of them. And y'all saw that, dude. They broke the window and then threw a flashbang into a church because that's where they were basically using it as their base of operations. They turned a church into a trap house. Like, that's really what we're talking about, and only in Florida. Like, of course it had to be a Florida man.
That he did worse than the Pharisees did. They made it the house of the thieves. They made this one truly a house of debauchery.
They did, and they called themselves the Cutthroat Killers. And they did, like I said, the shooting at Buc-ee's, which again, fry them. But there was also overdoses. There was other shootings that were involved with this too from this group. Yeah, and I'm even wondering, and I'm not saying this like it's a fact. I'm saying I wonder if the pastor was involved. Was the church just a front? Like, did they even have regular Sunday attendees? Or was it all a front so that they could get a tax exempt status to do whatever the hell they wanted? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it is smart. How many times have you seen a church van get pulled over? I ain't never seen it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I, at one point in time, doing the Boo Hurt shit, I thought about opening a Boo Hurt gym, right? A night fighting gym in Louisiana. It's not going to work for financial reasons, but I thought, okay, if I open a gym that happens to have like a Boo Hurt component, but for anybody who doesn't want to do that, it's just a regular gym, maybe it could work it that way. And I even thought about registering it as a religious organization and like making it a temple where we don't really care what God you worship, but if your religious beliefs tell you that being in shape is good and righteous, then like come worship with this kind of thing. You know what I mean? I looked into it. It's actually really embarrassingly easy to do that. And so for, obvious reasons, I did not do that. But like it's just filing the paperwork, and they send a expert, quote unquote. I'm not even going to say that. That's their words, not mine. That's overly generous. That is so gracious to call that person an expert. They send out a person with a clipboard to basically go down a checklist of like 8 things to make sure that you're doing these things. And it's very loose because it's not like you are setting up a Catholic church and now you have to get the Pope involved and shit. It's any religious organization, of which there's like 70,000 acknowledged in the United States as tax exempt religious organizations and shit. And you could just start your own if you want to. It's really easy to do that. So while I'm saying this, I don't know for a fact if this church was just a front or was it a legitimate church that had a really dark underbelly to it. Or, I mean, at this point, we don't know. This just happened the other day. I found it. I thought it'd be interesting enough for us to talk about. But yeah, Florida man still be out there doing Florida man shit. So here we have it. Anyway, on to the next topic. Now, there was a mass shooting in Germany. I didn't know about this until today. Mass shooting at German youth facility leaves 6 dead. Now, again, anything that's a mass shooting means 4 or more. So before we get into it, just going to throw that out that means that. But 6 were killed. Let's learn about this together, y'all. All right, so I'm going to turn this down because I don't think there's reporting. They're basically showing a bunch of cop cars and ambulances around the facility. I don't understand, right? And Germany also has their own migrant problems. He said around 12:10. Hold on, I'm gonna back that up so I could get it here. Around 12:10 police today and at noon on Monday, patrol cars drove to the scene and colleagues unfortunately found several dead people there. The alleged gunman was arrested just in a short time after the crime. 2 other people are undergoing police action. That means meaning that the police are interrogated and the necessary subjects forensics. Okay, they're getting the forensics on the subjects. So let's learn more about it, y'all. Hopefully that there's more information that's come out about it since the video was taken. Let's talk. So Germany, at least 6 killed in shooting in Stade. I might be mispronouncing it. I only speak American English and barely, y'all. Police said the deadly Stade shooting was likely an extended family tragedy triggered by a custody dispute. Oh, shit. With the state interior minister describing it as extremely cold-blooded act of violence. Oh no, this is baby mama drama? Oh shit. The shooting in the northern German city of Stade left several people dead on Monday, according to local police. Police initially reported a death toll of 5 adults, but later on Monday said it had risen to 6. 5 people died at the scene, while the 6 died in the hospital due to injuries sustained during the shooting. So what do we know about the Stade shooting? State police said 2 people were arrested, including the suspected shooter. There were no other suspects on the run. The Reuters news agency cited a police spokesperson as saying several people were also injured in the incident, but police did not give an exact number. Shots were fired near a youth center in the city center. That's what the German news agency said. The facility includes temporary accommodation for pregnant women or young mothers with children. Oh, man, this is like a women's shelter? Oh, God. A police spokesperson told AFP news agency the shooting was likely an extended family tragedy. It does not appear to be a case of femicide or to have a political motive. Okay, so that takes the migrant conversation out. I said that a minute ago. That's not this. Adding that the motive instead appeared to be rooted in the environment of Youth Welfare Center, Youth Welfare Center. Daniela Behrens, the Interior Minister of Lower Saxony, the state where Stade is located, stressed the attack had no political or economic motive. She described it as an extremely cold-blooded act of violence. Okay, so it wasn't like some sort of a Islamic extremist type of thing. That's good to know, but also, bro. So what do we know about the shooting suspect victims? All those killed in the shooting incident were staff members at the youth center. Catherine Schul, chief constable of the Lüneburg police headquarters, said at a press conference on Monday. They included 4 women and 2 men. The suspect is a 45-year-old German with Turkish roots. Okay, maybe the migrant conversation comes back now. I don't know. He was known to police for having voiced threats in the past, but had not been considered absolutely violent. So your boy had already made threats, and the cops already had him on their radar, and somehow, yeah, okay. Schul said the motive was believed to be a child custody dispute. The suspect was in a custody battle over his 3-month-old daughter. The girl and her 34-year-old mother were in the office at the time of the shooting, but were unharmed. Wow. A spokesperson for the public prosecutor's office said during the press conference that no arrest warrant has been issued yet for the main suspect. The warrant would depend on the police's further investigations. The suspected shooter was arrested as he fled in a car that was driven by a woman who was arrested with him. The new girl, obviously. Investigators' initial findings suggest the driver is a member of the suspected shooter's circle of acquaintances or family. God, dog. So the shooting took place. We already talked about that. Yeah. So, I mean, that is a tragedy. Regardless of what the motive was, it's a tragedy either way it goes. But, I mean, that is absolutely insane. So the police are warning of inaccurate information regarding the shooter, probably because they're not trying to have a whole immigrant riot on their hands like South Africa right now. But the police warned that unconfirmed information about the situation on the ground was being shared in the chat groups and social media. The accounts of events currently circulating do not correspond to the facts as confirmed by police. Police urge the public to refrain from sharing unverified reports, voice messages, or rumors. This can cause uncertainty and hamper police operations, which that is it's a very true statement here. Anyway, wow. So we covered a lot tonight, y'all. We went all over the place. Started off talking about, the fires in Colorado, jumped to the Catholic Church, jumped to China, and then we ended up with a shooting in Germany. But yeah, dude, this is a weird episode. It really was. But I enjoyed my time this evening, and I hope all of you did as well. So for any of the listeners to the Cajun Knight that would like to be a part of the live conversation, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central, link is in the description below. Come check out patreon.com/Cajun Knight. There's only one tier for entry. We're just trying to grow this to be its own information sharing group that just gets together to have the back and forth about the things and the stuff that's going on in our day-to-day world. But also, hopefully you're watching this on YouTube. And if you are, hit the like, hit the subscribe, comment, help us boost this algorithm, man. The YouTube channel has only a few hundred subscribers. I started the channel years ago and I had plans and intentions for it, but there's only so many hours in the day. So that's always been kind of a side hobby and a side project, but who knows? Maybe the Cajun Knight Live could make that YouTube channel a thing in its own right. I don't know. I have nothing but high hopes here. So if you're listening, drop a comment, hit the subscribes, the likes. If you're listening on Spotify, do the same thing. Hit a comment, hit the thumbs up, hit a follow for the Cult of Conspiracy, whatever the case might be. Help us boost these algorithms, y'all, and we appreciate everybody who's done so already. All this being said, I enjoyed my evening. I hope everything is going great for y'all. As always, y'all, I am the Cajun Knight, and God bless.